they can continue what they did yesterday. I'm looking for a really, really big battle for that top 3 at the moment. And if Angel Alliance is going to stick around as well, then that's even better. We've got a battle for first place between 4 teams right now, and that's really, really scintillating viewing going into Game 1 of Day 2.
Well, that's the pre-show done and dusted, completed, wrapped up. We head over to Miramar now, as you said, for our first match of the night now for Day 2 of PCS 3 Apac. It's match 5 in total. And really, by the end of tonight, at its conclusion, we will be a third of the way through already. It's quick. It's very, very quick. And it just sort of highlights that each match is just so important in the grand scheme of things. You know, you tell Fury, really for PCS2, I remember them saying how they did this and that wrong in the last match. But I said to them, well, technically every match you could have got an extra point or 2. And obviously, Divine could have got an extra point or 2. So you've got to make use of the rounds that you've got in these early games, and that's what it's all about. And I said it at the very beginning of the pre-show, Jordan. It's about the start that you can have over the first 8 games.
Well, can we just touch on that even then? There was a graphic as you were talking. I don't know how many people really were looking too deep into that one, but for Fury yesterday, they only got 4 points on Miramar. They were 11th place on the Miramar standings, and then they take 2nd place overall. So there is a very obvious fix to what happened for them yesterday. It's just perform a little bit better on Miramar. Maybe get a bit of circle luck. Maybe have a little bit of a better rotation here or there. It's unbelievable that they would only get another 4 points here on Miramar. The expectation will definitely be that they can turn that around. And then again, they only have to go and do half as much as what they did on Erangel to kind of keep up the pace that they set from day 1. So I think that's a good sign for them. You know, they've obviously left a little bit in the tank when it comes to Miramar. And I think it's pretty obvious that, you know, they'll come into today expecting to do better than what they did there. For teams like Buriram, who were a bit more of a 50-50 split, it's kind of harder to say, you know, because you're trying to match what you were able to do yesterday instead of coming into this one with a bit of a fresh mindset saying, look, as long as we get more than 4 points out of Miramar, we're probably pretty happy compared to what happened yesterday.
Well, we have just seen Purple Mood landing in Los Leonas, but it's such a large city. I don't think much will come from it. If anything happens, of course, we'll jump back over, but I think for the most part, Fury will loot the west side and Purple Mood will loot the east side of Los Leonas, and really, I don't think we'll see any engagements there. LG Divine, though, on Miramar, well, they were the polar opposite of Fury. They were the kings of Miramar yesterday, and it's a large reason why they are in 4th place on 37 points at the moment. 15.5 average points, averaging just the 5.5 kills. The way they were basically playing Miramar was they weren't getting into early conflicts, which kept their utility high, kept their players alive, and they got good position. Then, at about the 22, 23-minute mark, that's when they would push out, look for those kills, get those third parties, sweep around, and basically get those wins off the back of just sort of cleaning up the other teams that were wounded and that didn't have the utility to take those fights. So very clinical from LG Divine on day number 1's Miramar, and would have to say that they'll just be looking to sort of replicate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very much the goal for them. 31 points coming from Miramar for LG Divine yesterday out of their total 37. It's going to be a angle where we get a bit of an understanding maybe of what they can bring to the table there today, because we didn't really get a very good look at them yesterday on that map. A team that was consistent across the board, though, was Buriram. They had about 19 points, I think, out of Miramar, and as a result, 21 on Erangel. So they were looking good on both of the 2 maps, and that's kind of another one of the reasons where I feel like they've been the most consistent team so far in the competition. They've been doing a pretty damn good job, you know, across the board, and they've got a very, very strong roster here. You see Jowman in there. He's actually not playing at the moment for Buriram. They've still got the same roster that we saw from previous seasons, but he's definitely a solid player. If they do need to bring in a sub, I can think of no one better really than Jowman, who back in like PCS 1, when Q Confirm went on that absolute rampage, was just a standout player. He was probably the standout player for the roster. I think it was Jowman and Gems, but for me, Jowman was the one that really sort of shined the brightest. And to see him in this Buriram roster really only bolsters them. It's just, it's kind of sad, right, that PUBG isn't a 5-man game, because I think he would slot right in and make this one of the best teams, if not the best team within the APAC region, as they are definitely up there in that discussion. And with the addition of Jowman, I can only imagine that they'll go from strength to strength.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. You mentioned that dynamic duo, Gems and Jowman. From my knowledge, I think Gems actually just missed out on returning to PCS in 6th place in the PUBG Thailand Master Series for a tackle round, which was formerly Q confirmed. So it's a bit of a shame that we actually never really got to see Q confirm after that first PCS come back into the PUBG Continental Series. We'll see whether or not Jowman makes an appearance at some point. I even said it to you before. I don't know who he replaces really out of that team. So, look, a vital sub if needed as we continue to watch these teams rotating throughout Miramar here for phase number 1. A pretty normal sort of circle, up a bit north towards San Martin, La Cobb, El Pozo, the sort of triangle here. And a lot of teams already very early on getting those positions. It's so paramount. It's so important on Miramar to get these early positions. If you're playing edge and you're playing in late, you're going to be spotted from teams in the center with a bit of elevation. Makes it so difficult to get in, which is probably why, Jordan, we see a team like Buriram United actually perform better on Erangel, simply because they are a team that likes to play a bit more on the edge.
Yeah, they definitely do. They're one of the better edge teams that we see in PCS Apac. So a team that kind of likes to frag out in the middle stages of the game. You'll see that quite a lot. And we even did get to see a bit of it yesterday on Miramar in that first game. I think they placed something like 7th or 8th, and they had about 10 or 11 kills in that performance. And you just would have thought, like, if they keep rolling through all these teams, how big can they make this game? It was just a rather unfortunate circle shift that moved quite well away from them, that forced them, you know, to make a bit of a rough rotation through like 2 or 3 teams. And it was just never going to happen. But even in that rotation, they got a few frags. And speaking of a few, Moy has picked up Subang. He's the first player that will drop in day 2 of PCS3 APAC. And it's going to be a point over to those boys. So good start for Victim Rise, as they're sitting, you know, in the middle of the pack. And if they have a good day here, could definitely see themselves at least looking to catch the leaders at the end of day 2.
Battle Arena Elites have got a lot of work to do. Obviously, down the bottom at the moment, just the 11 points. They did kind of rectify things slightly on Erangel. It was, of course, Miramar where they the most. It's such a strong roster, and obviously it's been spoken about the transition between Jukesy and Flood and the swap with Fury, but Jukesy is a very valuable player, still a great player. And for a team that was only 7 points away from, I think, the top 3 in PCS2, and they were fighting the whole way through, it's not been a good start, but I definitely think that they can turn it around pretty quickly on. Here's, of course, the circle. Now, we've still got a minute and a half remaining, but you can already see, Jordan, that's what I was saying about a minute ago, how many teams were already inside at this circle and pretty much towards the center. Not much has necessarily changed here. The teams on the outer edge still coming in very late. Buriram's around the south side of Hacienda, so they're not going to go too far in. There are some major cities still in play here, though, and if those cities do stay in towards the later stages, teams can, of course, crash into those cities if need be. But for the most part, you're looking for high elevation with cover around that elevation so that if you are spotted, you can kind of fall back to like a ditch or a little bowl, kind of like where Cerberus are at right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because all the teams at the moment are sort of taking real estate in the bottom 50% of the circle. No one's interested up towards the north near La Cobb, anywhere like that. So if we do get a hard northern shift, this is going to be another mass rotation. Most of the teams banking on it coming back down further toward the south, down near San Martin, down near Power Grid, which is not a huge surprise. That's kind of one of the hot spots on Miramar where the circle does tend to shrink towards a little bit more often than not, whereas up towards La Cobb, you really do need to have that hard northern shift a couple of times. So it's not a huge surprise to see these teams kind of congregating in a similar position, but I don't know how Edie's got himself into this kind of a spot. He doesn't have a vehicle by the looks of things, and he's sort of out in no man's land on his own. It's not going to be a fun game for him if he gets stuck here. Speaking of the circle shift, by the way, we have actually ended up going north, and that's what I was talking about with all these teams down in the bottom 50, probably 60%, I'll give it, of the circle, all now having to come up north, going to have to go through each other, past each other. It's only those teams like Division X Gaming that are feeling happy, but Edie spoke about him, and for Unicorns, I mean, it hasn't gotten much better from day 1 into day 2 by the looks of things, because that's a rough one to lose. It's unfortunate losing a player that early, but I suppose it is what it is. It's going to be the least of their problems, those Xenox, because they are one of the teams that's going to have to make a very, very big rotation. In fact, one of the teams that has to make the biggest rotation, because they were one of the southernmost teams.
Everyone has to make a rotation. Every single team is going to have to get moving. Maybe one or two might be able to stay put if they are fine with where they were based off of phase one, which about 90% of the server certainly was not fine for phase one. The whole landscape has now changed, basically, though. El Pozo, San Martin, that's two cities taken out of phase one here for phase number two. La Cob's in, like you said. And that is now, as I said, going to change the landscape. You've got the crater there as well. That's going to be a massive place of conflict later on. Maybe not so much for phase two if you are a little bit wary of going there early, because obviously high elevation, a lot of teams alive can then all see you at once. Victim Rise, for the time being, I'm pretty happy to just stay and hang out around the south side of this phase 2 circle. But for the most part, just looking at my map, I can see so many teams have shifted more north towards Larkov, Crater Fields. There's a nice heavy split here as well from Division X Gaming, occupying a large portion center of this circle. Victim Rise still on the move, and Magic Esports are close by. There are a few teams that still need to make their way in. Cerberus at Power Grid, not inside of the circle. Unicorn, Day Trade now making their way from El Pozo. Buram, we know they like to play edge. Water Treatment's where they are at currently. They still need to go in a little bit further, though, as Tong K, who was one of the standout players from day number one, a couple of 3Ks, and really a massive reason why Magic Esport are in the top 5 at the moment. Trying his chances there, not going to be too successful, but a good position for Magic Esports. Fury close by to them, and Victim Rise now continue their move forward from the south portion of the circle.
Yeah, this is definitely a tough circle to call, isn't it? Because if you go all the way up to Larkob, then if it comes back to the south, you've got all that hilly terrain that you have to negotiate. And yeah, by virtue of it being Miramar, there is going to be hilly terrain pretty much everywhere. It's just how the map is. It's actually one of the more difficult parts of the map, I think, to play up towards Larkob. So that's why most of the teams are sort of sitting around toward the center, staying around towards the crater. Coming off of the hills is going to be easier than coming onto the hills, and so they're banking on it staying a little bit more south again. We're going to have to see a very, very hard northern shift if it's to go over La Cobreria. But it is one of the more interesting, actually, final circles I find on Miramar, is when it does actually go down towards La Cobreria, and it's sort of like half and half between the town and the hill above it. And that's where we get some pretty interesting final gameplay, with teams sort of shooting off the hill and teams sort of trying to hide inside of the town. Two sort of different styles of gameplay. Either way, Victim Rise finding themselves in the kill feed again, but this time for the wrong reasons. So too is Fury, and perhaps their woes on Miramar continue. Now, in fairness, this hasn't been a kind circle shift for them, but I doubt it's going to get any kind of running into Buriram, and losing Flood early on in the piece is not going to be good news for them.
Oh, here we go. Tonight, though, with the nice early knockdown onto Evil Patrick. Angel Alliance had a great day one. Maybe not the start to day two they would like. Sharper Esports, well, it's in their name. They are quite sharp. They got some good fraggers on this roster. Mad Dog's still alive, who has definitely been the standout for Angel Alliance. Here in the Crater Fields, though, the circle keeps these guys in for phase 3, so they've got time. This is not a rush. Angel Alliance do not have to worry too much in terms of moving away from the blue. They're just in barely, as you can see on the minimap for phase 3, which has gone right onto Crater. Larkob's out, basically. And speaking of out, Tong K in the kill feed has just been taken out by Samoy. That's a big loss for Magic Esports. Mad Dog just spraying on the edge of that smoke as Sonoy was making the run in front of the crate, is able to get by successfully. Not a surprise to see Mad Dog being the initiator here for Angel Alliance, but they're playing this smart, Jordan. They're not getting too involved. They lost one, okay, but that doesn't mean they have to go running around looking for that revenge kill. Hold your position. You got the shed. You're in the circle. Hold your ground. Look for information.
Yeah, you don't want to be getting too involved in a fight here either, particularly if they're aware of the fact that Ferox has a player behind them somewhere, or a couple of players behind them, that will inevitably have to come in, although I'll expect them to rotate a bit further north and sort of wrap around the crater as opposed to going straight into the center. Sharper Esport also not really the kind of team that you want to be taking on at this point. Sure, they're sitting in 9th place. It doesn't look all that threatening, but knowing that the majority of that roster is the team that comprised Golden Cat back in the day, we've seen some solid stuff from them, even in PCS kind of competitions. And so they are a solid team. And this is what I'm talking about, the Larkob kind of 50-50 setup. It's not really a 50-50. The circle's definitely moving away from Larkob, but there's enough of it in that it gives room for at least one, maybe two teams, depending on how much real estate is taken up here by day trade, to find some cover there in Larkob area. But the issue is going to be they're going to have to find their way out of it. And that's what I always like about these kinds of northern circles, is when teams have to push out of Larkob area, they really have to fight their way out. And for Day Trade, I'm imagining it's going to be no different.
Crater's going to be a big, big place of conflict, though. I said it before, and I'm going to repeat it here, because now that we're into phase 3, heading to phase 4, it's such a massive position to hold. Victim Rise currently with that location. They'll have that high ground. They can see a lot of teams. The downside to it, of course, is that since it's very early on, so many teams can then look up towards them, get a few knocks, put pressure on, but it's so difficult to sort of drive up to their location and sort of, I guess, breach them by foot, right? 10 seconds away from phase number 4, and you can see we've got it's about 4 or 5 teams now around the crater fields. No one inside of it for good reason. If you go into that crater, it is so difficult to make your way out of it.
Ooh.
And that is another shifting circle. This one going to the north. It keeps half of crater in. The good half, if you're Division X and Victim Rise, they don't necessarily have to move. It doesn't bode well, though, for a team like Fury, Cerberus, Sharper, Magic all need to move. Namsy and Divine now getting breached. Just Moments is knocked. So is Los Santos. Levi is going to be flushed immediately after being knocked here. So LG Divine not going to get out without a scratch. They're wounded. Division X are watching as well from the hill. This is a messy, messy fight. Namsy doesn't have a frag grenade, does throw in the stun grenade. And now we switch over to a second fight, Jordan. It's Sophia taking out Edie. This is not a good look for the teams in the top 4 right now. LG Divine and Buram.
Yeah, it's all over the place, isn't it? Bay not getting out of there unscathed either, though. They lose Sophia, so it's all over the place right now, isn't it? Bay fighting, LG Divine fighting, Buram, Purple Mood. Everyone's trying to get involved in really taking a position. I think that's what this is all about, locking down a position at the moment, because there isn't that much real estate now that circle shift has gone so hard to the northeast. Bay will get themselves another point here when Loki's confirms the kill onto Edie, but in that meanwhile, the res has come across. So 2 Buram players up for the moment, both of them sitting inside the smoke. You can just see inside of the building, but
From the Futures here.
yeah, From the Futures hanging around as well, so surely only one out of these 3 teams can get out of this one alive. And speaking about that, LG Divine seem to have won their battle against Purple Mood, losing only the 1 player. Probably not too bad of a shout for them. If you're getting breached by a full team of 4 and you only lose 1, I think you can take that most days of the week.
Yeah, and it's a good win for LG Divine, not just for the fact they got the kills, they kept 3 alive, but their position inside of this circle, they've got a nice compound. At worst, another team now has to breach them. They're ready for it. They know the angles that they need to hold. It's a good look right now for LG Divine, who creep up into the top 2, 41 points. Obviously, long time until really the leaderboard has much of a significance, but it's always nice to sort of look at. Now, Bay have got 3 up here, as Jukesy does make his way over to help out Neferhor and Loki's, as I mentioned before, from the future, also at this compound with Buram United, who have gotten off, once again, just like day 1, off to a slow start here on Miramar. They do their best work on Erangel, as Kim Siver on the board for Sharper Esports, still kill, taking out Algen bots of Angel Alliance, who are now also down to 2 players. From the future, though, are going to move. They're going to move to that compound just very slightly to the south of the previous compound we were at. And just as we left the compound, Jordan, as it usually goes, Buram have been wiped out.
Yeah, that's a better start for Bay than what they had yesterday. So Miramar turning around for them. Doesn't seem to be turning around so nicely for Fury, though. They've got another player knocked down, although the res is going to be completed by Insight. They are just slugging it away on the edge of the circle, trying to keep their heads down for the moment. Angel Alliance don't seem like they're going to be able to put another performance like they did yesterday on the board in game 1 at least of day 2, down to just Nan and not a single kill this time. So things haven't gone their way, but they do have a fairly sizable amount of points already on the board. It's not the end of the world for them, especially considering Buram has been knocked out early. Lots of teams are going to be looking to close that gap now.
Oh, Jordan, look at the map. The feed here for LG Divine. It does keep Division X Gaming in, who of course will have that high ground position too. So in fact, I think they're almost maybe even in a slightly better position. Depending on how you want to look at it, Division X are going to be more likely to find kills while still having a good position in the circle. LG Divine's ability to get kills, I'm a little bit suspect on here. So a great spot. They're definitely going to get some placement points. And considering Buram's early departure, I think LG Divine will take first place back after the conclusion of this game, barring a catastrophe. We'll see how it plays out, though. Phase 5 initiated, and apparently Gibberit is going to bleed out to Waiki Kamukau. Fury on the board here from a very tough spot. They're making it work, as Nan actually got Sweet Soul, who was knocked by Maximus. This is out to the very far west, not even inside of the current circle, and the blue's moving. So Nan is not going to be able to stay alive for much longer here. It's going to be Bryn who gets that elimination. But we need to switch our attention back over to Victim Rise and Fury, because Cow is creeping up this hill, getting closer and closer. There goes Unicorn Cyber. From the future, though, from behind, are going to get the knock on the Waiki Kamukau. Insight's down as well. I think it's only one up at the moment for Fury.
Yep, that'd be Ronan, who's the one alive, although he might be able to get the res onto Insight. I think they're in a shack. No, they're not. Insight was making his way up the hill. Ronan trying to do the same. Fury's done here. There is no way Ronan gets up this hill alive unless, for some reason, Victim Rise and From the Future finish each other off and completely forget about Ronan. It's not a good start to the day for Fury. A, on the other hand, as we jump over there, actually firing a few shots into the back of From the Future, so they may be bailing Victim Rise and potentially even Ronan out of a bit of trouble. Can see on the minimap, though, that Ronan has got himself into an engagement there and has finished off one of the From the Future players. There's still 3 remaining, though, and now they know exactly where he is. He, like I said, surely cannot get out of this hole in one piece.
No, certainly can't. 4 kills, though, for Battle Arena Elites. Despite the fact that they lost Sophia so early on, they've been able to at least manage a few kills. They're inside of the circle. They can make something work here in this first game of the night, and that's exactly what they really needed here. The recipe for success is there for them now in this game to get back into that log jam in the middle of the pack on the leaderboard. Mip and Zuzu going to be eliminated by Samoy. Victim Rise continue their rise up the leaderboard. They're going to go up into 5th place now. Juxi having to just fall away from Umama and From the Future close by. And all of a sudden, this Crater Hill has become a hot spot. Next, Ferox, Sharper Esports, Magic, and Victim Rise all trying to find a place on top of it. It's phase 6. It's LG Divine.
Yeah, Ronan gets eliminated by Gen Foss. It was really a matter of time for him. Can't stick around for a placement point, at least for Fury. So they're out in 11th, then FTF out in 10th, and I think we're down to 9 teams now. So it's very quickly starting to fall by the wayside for quite a few. Bay putting that pressure onto From the Future has really ruined their game. It looked like they were going to be able to get a few kills on the board, but just shot in the back by the Bay fellas, and now they're out of it. So turning our attention back to Victim Rise, who was the team that was in an engagement earlier on with From the Future, and they are now trying to get past Magic. It's just such a rough circle for so many teams. It's like this 50-50. You're either up on top of the crater or you're at the bottom, and at the moment it seems like if you're at the bottom, you're actually in a better spot, where traditional thinking would say that high ground is better. Definitely not the case at the moment.
Well, the bottom's got that beautiful compound of safety right there for LG Divine. In the end, who hasn't been breached for a little while now, so they've been sitting quite pretty. It's Day Trade and Hydra Gaming just on the cliff face here on Crater, going toe-to-toe. Venonika's been knocked down. Not good signs for Day Trade, who have only got the 1 kill so far. With Ferox's elimination, though, we're down to just 7 teams, 20 alive. And it's another bloodbath here, similar to day number 1. Two-hand Robo going to be knocked and flushed by Fergus. 4 kills for Division X, and they've still got 4 alive here. They're winning their fights, they're cleaning up, and they're keeping their players alive. And they're also now heading upwards on the leaderboard and into the top 7. And they've got this high ground against Flash, against Norins, against Day Trade Gaming. They send them packing. 6 kills now for Division X Gaming. And all 4 players still alive. There's 1 down, but they'll get the revive.
Got the high ground. Well, so does Magic, and that hasn't helped them out too much. Nice shots through there from Nefahor and Lokis. And that's the end of Sulaby. So Magic down to just 2 remaining players. Bay, I have enjoyed watching Bay actually so far in this game. They've been aggressive when the opportunity presented itself. They've slowed down their gameplay when they could have been put under pressure. And once again, they're sensing the blood in the water. They know that they have the numbers advantage now over Magic with that kill that they've just gotten. And this is their opportunity to take some pretty important positioning. Wow, great shots. Again from Nefahor. The headshot from Juxi as well to finish off. Alex was the finishing blow. So that is going to be Bay into the top 4 and definitely turning around their games from day one into day two. In fact, I think they've like doubled or even tripled their points in just one game so far. They've doubled.
Tremendous start. Yeah, they certainly have. They've even more than doubled their points. They had 11 for all of day one. They've got 13 points here in the first game of the night. Gets them to 24, and they are within striking distance to those teams directly above them. A good little sort of season kickstarter already for Bay in this game, when they can do more. They're not done yet, but this is where it gets a little bit more tricky. Division X have got 3. Divine have also got 3, so it's a 3 versus 3 versus 3. And everyone's got a pretty decent amount of space here. But Bay are not in the circle. Neither is Division X. And Jordan, the only way that these two teams get into the circle is by putting themselves into the sightlines of LG Divine. Locus is knocked from long K, from a long way. I don't sense Bay are going to get out of this pickle.
No, definitely doesn't seem to be an easy situation for them, because if they go over one side of the ridge, they've got to deal with LG Divine. If they go over the other side, they have to deal with Division X, and Division X are also sensing the opportunity and pushing up, taking advantage of it. IQ 500, he did drop to Jukesy, but it's not going to matter in the end. Numbers are there for Division X Gaming, but Xenox, we might actually be headed to the 100% win rate for LG Divine. 3 from 3 on Miramar is what they'd be able to get if they won this game. They won both Miramars yesterday in day one of PCS 3, and they're looking to put 3 on the trot together. And based on their run on Erangel, they kind of need it.
Yeah. I mean, they picked up 6 points from their 2 Erangel games yesterday, and it was 31 from their 2 Miramar games. A massive difference between the 2 maps for LG Divine. They retake first place for now, unless Division X can find the win here, in which case, what a way to start day number 2 for Division X Gaming. And I feel very happy that we spoke about them in the pre-show, Jordan. You especially mentioned them as one of the teams from that logjam in the middle of the pack that's certainly capable of getting into that top 5. At the moment, they're in the top 2, but look, from here, and as you can already see, it's turning into a slaughter. There was not much room for Division X to get down that hill. It's a 100% win rate on Miramar for LG Divine. 3 from 3. They had the first 2 games of Miramar yesterday, and they take match number 1 tonight on Miramar, the Kings of Miramar.
They certainly are. I got to say, that was fairly reminiscent of the games they